Have you ever found yourself completely stuck, just struggling to find the exact right words or maybe the correct tense when you're speaking English? Well, welcome to today's explainer. This guide is absolutely going to serve as your master key to unlocking everyday communication. We're going back to the basics, but in a highly visual, structural way that makes it practically impossible to forget.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First up, the simple present tense. 2, the formula building rules. 3, practical usage. And finally, number 4, adverbs of frequency. All right, section 1, the simple present tense, our absolute foundation. Right out of the gate, English sentences split into 2 very distinct tracks. Over on the left side, we've got the to-be verbs, is, am, and are. And on the right, we have our ordinary verbs, those action words like run, play, or eat. Now, the absolute golden rule of English grammar is that we have to treat these 2 categories completely differently. If you don't grasp how this base layer works, the rest of your grammar structure just won't hold up in a real conversation.
Moving right along to section 2, formula building rules.
Okay, so here is the blueprint for positive statements using those ordinary verbs. I kind of like to think of these grammar rules as secret codes just waiting to be cracked. If your subject is I, you, we, or they, you just grab the bare, unchanged verb. Simple, right? But if your subject is he, she, or it, you've got to add an S or ES to the end of that verb. And you specifically add ES when the verb ends in letters like S, SH, CH, O, X, or Z. Trust me, once you internalize this code, you can build literally any sentence you need. Let's look at an example. I often get up at 6. Because our subject is I, the verb get stays totally bare. But watch what happens when we switch the subject to she. It completely forces the verb wash to adapt. Since wash ends in sh, we just tack on that es to make it washes.
Now, what if we want to build a negative sentence? We just pop in a brand new block, we use do not for I, you, we, and they, and we use does not for he, she, and it. And hey, here is the real magic trick. The second you put in do not or does not, your main verb goes right back to being perfectly bare no matter what the subject is.
Check this out. This do not block effortlessly transforms a daily habit into a negative statement. We just sandwich the word don't right between the subject I and our bare verb get. It's incredibly straightforward once you visualize the blocks fitting together like that.
Okay, so if we want to ask a question, the formula shifts again. This time, we place our helpers, do or does, at the very front of the sentence. You literally just drag them to the beginning. So to ask someone about their morning routine, you simply kick things off with do, follow it with the subject, and then your bare verb. Do you get up at 6?
All right, let's jump tracks for a second and look at the to be verbs formula. This track is totally different, but honestly, it's wonderfully simple. It relies exclusively on matching your subject with its correct form is, am, or are. That's it. No action verbs, no do, no does. Just the subject hanging out with its matching to-be partner.
These to-be verbs effortlessly describe a profession or a characteristic. For example, she is a teacher, or she is beautiful. The word is acts exactly like an equal sign in math, just directly connecting the subject to the noun or adjective describing it. Making a negative formula here is also an absolute breeze. You just drop the word not right after is, am, or are. You don't have to bring in any outside helper words at all. So that positive statement smoothly and easily transitions to she isn't a teacher. And for a question with a to-be verb, you just flip the verb to the front of the subject. It's just a simple inversion of those first 2 blocks we talked about. You shift from stating she is to asking, is she a teacher? The visual simplicity of that little flip makes it super easy to remember. So now that we have all of our structural blueprints completely mapped out, I've got to ask you, when do we actually use these formulas in real life? Because let's face it, having the key to a door is pretty much useless if you don't know which door it unlocks, right?
Which brings us right to section 3, practical usage.
You are going to use these formulas constantly to express universal truths, like the fact that the Earth revolves around the sun. You'll also use them to describe your repeated actions or daily habits, to talk about what you do for a living, and to point out defining characteristics of the people or things around you. It's basically the tense of permanent reality.
But here is a really surprising exception. We actually use the simple present to talk about future scheduled events. I know, it sounds weird, but even though the plane leaves tomorrow, because it operates on a strict, unchangeable schedule, we treat it like a permanent fact. The exact same thing goes for dates, like saying Christmas Day falls on a Monday this year.
Another totally fascinating nuance here is that even for temporary thoughts and feelings happening exactly at the moment of speaking, we still use the simple present. If someone doesn't agree with you or doesn't want something right in this exact moment, you do not use the continuous tense. No way. You wouldn't say she is not wanting. You strictly stick to the simple present. She doesn't want you to do it.
All right, on to our final stop, section 4, adverbs of frequency.
If verbs are the structural frame of our sentences, then these adverbs are the decorations. They map out the exact probability of an action happening. We start way up at a 100% guarantee with always, and we step all the way down through usually, often, and sometimes, straight down to a 0% chance with never. They also give you these great expression blocks to answer the question, how often, like saying every week or twice a month.
But where do these words actually go in our sentence formulas? Well, the golden rule for placing these adverbs is that they have to go right before an ordinary verb, but they must sit neatly after a to-be verb or an auxiliary helper verb.
Let's look at the first example here. The word usually sits securely before the ordinary verb takes. But in the second example, the word always waits politely after the to-be verb is. If you can master this positioning, your sentences are going to sound incredibly native.
You've got to keep an eye out for these specific frequency words whenever you're reading or listening. They act as these massive neon signs indicating that you need to use the simple present formulas we just built today. The second you want to say sometimes or seldom, your brain should automatically load up those exact blueprints from section 1.
So, knowing that these building blocks construct the absolute foundation of daily English, how are you going to use this master key to start telling your own story? The very next time you talk about your routine, remember the patterns we built today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and honestly, I cannot wait to see the sentences you build next.